Do edicts work on the same arcane principles as spellcrafts and other magic?
Edicts are the strongest manifestation of magic we know, and they seem to violate all other lesser phenomena. No dispel cantrip has ever dented or abated an edict. Even archons with powers of great durability cannot shrug off their effects. Just look at Cairn. Now, what I find curious, edicts can flex a little. Or so my studies suggest this is the case. Take the Edict of Storms. While the day it was proclaimed was the most violent, the actual radius of the storm has changed over time. But most will have none of my hypotheses on this matter.
Fine. I'll take the bait. What's your conjecture about edicts?
So, in my studies, some edicts resolve some problem of the overlords and then vanish into history. But the edicts that linger around, almost all of them begin to widen. Their effects become more intense. Here's the intriguing part. The older the edict, and the more that's written about it, the more the reports of that edict get more dire over time.
That's how legends work. Each generation tells them bigger.
True, I could just be overreacting to sloppy record-keeping, but my hunch is that there's some correlation going on here. I contend that edicts are powered by fear. Fear of Kyros helps fuel the casting, and fear of the edict feeds the magic, sustaining it, and, if enough people fear it, even growing it a bit.
Rule by fear is certainly Kyros' way.
Intellectual honesty demands that I study the matter more. If I'm correct, the more people fear and obsess over an edict, the stronger it becomes. Anyway, another study for another time. And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of the magic of the Archons? I've studied many of the Archons for many years. Compared to the other sages, I'm an expert on the subject. Which is sad, because I feel I've still so much to learn. How does the magic of the Archons work? The Archons all have magical powers that are intuitive. When the voices of Narod pulls out someone's mind, or Graven Ash protects his soldiers, that magic isn't a signed spell or ritual. To them, it's close to flexing one's hand. Archons are what's the word for it? Axiom of magic? The root of magic. Spell pioneers? I'm sure this analogy is off in many ways, but I see Archons as the mothers of original magic, and everyone else is just imitating them. While every guild or school of magic will ascribe different a name to the theory, all mages inevitably stumble onto an inescapable fact. Only the Archons can will magic into being. Everyone else can only cast magic by invoking the sigil of an Archon that has come before. None know how the Archons do their magic. It seems to be different with each Archon, but theory suggests that once an Archon starts to invoke their powers, anyone else who comes after that Archon could, with the proper knowledge, tap into that power with the proper sigil and know-how. This observed law has given rise to a common question from young students. Could one guess at a sigil of an Archon not yet born, or not remembered by history, or simply unknown to the caster, and successfully cast a spell? Experienced mystics would tell you this is impossible, for they know it's not enough to just mimic the gestures of a sigil. One must have a willful, conscientious knowledge of the Archon and the intended power being channeled. To confuse things a bit, Archons learn to cast other spells in the same fashion as us lesser mages. If you are as important as an Archon, you learn quick that all knowledge is power. Are all Archons loyal to Kyros? Officially, yes. In actuality, no. Those with a true gift for magic always come to the attention of Kyros. A few manage to evade attention for a bit. The School of Tides was founded by one such uncontrollable, but these are history's exceptions. Occulted Jade, Archon of Tides, never bowed to Kyros, and it's said she survived the assassins sent to silence her. It makes her flight from Kyros before the war all the more troubling. We knew her as this symbol of strength, but when threatened, her weaker nature won. When we read biographies of the Archons, We often refer to them as exarchs in their formative years before stepping into their prime. But officially, Kyros is supposed to grant all titles of archons. It's quite the faux pas to self-appellate. Exactly why Jade insisted on calling herself Archon of Tides. She didn't need Kyros' approval to wear the title she deserves, and I know she loved the fact that doing so must have annoyed Kyros. How was an Archon born, or bred? I think we all dream of one day waking up and being an Archon. Given some of the madmen and loons that have exhibited mystical greatness, it can seem unfair that the rest of us can't do it. I can say with confidence Archons aren't born, they become. Graven Ash is a good study of this. Before he was the Archon of War, he was a successful commander, each victory more daring and glorious than the next. Somewhere along the way, his leadership took on mystical qualities. The Graven Ash we know today can reach out and protect his soldiers from harm, but maybe at first, he could just protect those near him. I wouldn't know for certain, but all will attest that he didn't have this power his whole life.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of spellcraft?
I've forgotten more than most blood chanters have ever learned. What do you want to know?
Can you teach me anything?
I think you know all I can teach you.
What sort of magics did the sages teach you? Sage Hinden tutored me in the traditional sigils, those of preservation, concealment, and healing, as derived from the bygone Archon of Theravaris, Fading Wrath, and the Archon and the Orphan Midwife. The preservation magic is largely functional, sealing parchment, binding books, that sort of thing. All of us chroniclers learned concealment magic, as our ideal method would be to study events without contaminating the decisions made. As for the healing magic, many of us modern sages study this a great deal. The school has a shoddy reputation among the common folk. I figure if they knew us as healers and caregivers, maybe we start to change opinions. Healing. Now that's a noble craft to study. True, but given how accident-prone I can be, I think the person that benefits most from my magic is me. But certainly, the most gratifying spells I know are the ones that ease pain and suffering. They make me feel slightly useful. What can you tell me about signing magic? Scholars don't have a good word for what Archons do when they cast magic. Couldn't tell you how Graven Ash casts his protection over his soldiers, nor would I know how Bloodmark consciously decides to move through a shadow. But when us mere mages want to cast a spell, we do so by signing the sigil of an Archon that previously discovered the magical phenomena in question. It's debated whether Archons create new magic, or just discover magic that was waiting for us, but such questions seem impossible to answer while sober.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
Are you familiar with the Old Walls?
Familiar is a relative term. I think I know more than most, but it's a subject of mystery, even to the scholars. Though, I must admit, in addition to my reading, I've ventured into the Old Walls on occasion, and soiled many undergarments in the process.
Do you know who built them, or why? We can only seem to agree that they were built, but there's no consensus as to the who of it. We generally use the old realms or older realms when describing the folk that must have done all this construction ages ago. That's also where the younger realms got their name indirectly. Azure, Stalwart, and all them are older than you and I, but compared to the Old Walls, they're babies. As for the why, that's anyone's guess. I've always assumed it's an ancient road and an aqueduct network. If you just needed to fence off your neighbors, you wouldn't have such an elaborate, expansive masonry on the inside. What sorts of things have you seen in the Old Walls? Aside from the terrifying Bane, well, Every section of the old walls has its own jaw-dropping architecture. I've seen bridges that move when someone is near, mystical barriers that must have been standing for eons. And I've seen remains. So many remains. A lot of them sages from centuries past, or hapless drifters that must have been desperate for shelter. What fascinates me most are the symbols found on the interior architecture. I can't help but think if we shared notes with other Old Walls explorers, we might someday decipher the meanings. Kyros forbids exploration of the Old Walls. Did the Tearsmen have similar laws? In typical Younger Realms fashion, entering the Old Walls was never illegal, but plundering them was. The logic being that which rests in the Old Walls belongs to your local ruler, not you. The noble houses made a point of buying up anything that came out of the Old Walls. Plenty of ancient stuff in there, but sometimes you find stuff that's just a generation old, left by the last fool trying to search for treasure. If you've been through the Old Walls, you must be familiar with the Bane. More so than is healthy. I've seen one rip a young scribe in half with its nebulous talons, and I've run away from more than my fair share of angry Bane. That sounds redundant. They all seem angry. Heard all sorts of theories on the Bane. Heard they were dead mages, the nightmares of Archons come to life. One sage believes they're Kyros' children. Guess if you have enough ink and parchment, you can crap out any dumb idea. I profess to know very little and stick to what can be observed. They appear cunning, but lacking language, and they have animal-like qualities, but they seem drawn only to magic, commotion. Food and water seem irrelevant to them.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of the spires? History used to say that the older realms built the spires. These days, you'll hear children repeating that Kyros built them. Guess that's the new history. There are spires all over Tyranny, though I don't know the count. Maybe 40 or so. 5 of them are in the tiers, and generally, the spires follow the old walls, often occurring at junctions in the old masonry. The mountain spire is a notable exception. The other spires in the tiers connect to the old walls, but the mountain spire is just freestanding, a sore thumb in the middle of the tiers. Any ideas to their purpose? Lightning rod? Perch from which to survey the lands below? Signposts for a society of folks that flew like birds. On this matter, I have only conjecture and flights of fancy. The best hypothesis I've heard is that they were all built at the sites of major settlements now long gone, so maybe their haphazard placement is a hint about how the maps of old might have looked. Any idea why magic works better near the spires? The sages liken the phenomenon to heat radiating from a candle. The air is just thicker with magic, the closer you get to the spire. It can be a deadly trying to work spells close to a spire if you aren't wise to the effect. I'd be famous if I could tell you why this happened. I've always assumed they are the magical equivalent of river sources. Just as water endlessly flows from certain special sites, so too are there places where magic pours endlessly from a natural source. Any idea who built that structure on top of the mountain spire? Know any sculptors with superhuman strength and the power to fly? If not, I'm out of ideas. Structurally speaking, it looks vaguely, and I do mean vaguely, similar to the sculptures in the old Academy of Tides. But if that were the case, I think we know more. I also noticed a resemblance, but I can assure you, if it was built by an old tidecaster, it was the best kept secret in a school that prided itself on showmanship and boasting about your exploits. Oh, so you studied the art of being insufferable, and here I thought it was a natural gift.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
Okay. Let's go ahead then, and I guess we'll touch this, thing? Sure, why not? On closer inspection, a series of symbols carved around the base of the structure come into view. One symbol pulses with a blue-white glow. The pattern resembles the glowing lines of light seen on the floor of Ascension Hall moments before you found yourself transported above the clouds. As you stare at the symbol, the chill of the wind abates and your chest swells with warmth. The air finally feels welcoming, your lungs sated at last. You staked your claim on the tower and everything in it. Whatever that sculpture is, it belongs to you. I can feel power running through this place. Ebb surveys the surroundings, her gaze sweeping to the object at the center. You can sense the magic of the spire even from down below, but up here, this close to the axis of the spire, the deluge of energy is numbing. I feel dizzy. Do you feel dizzy? Barrick massages the brow of his helmet, causing a howl of grinding iron to echo across the expanse. What is this thing? The surface of the stone orb trembles at your words. For a brief moment, the solid rock undulates, the same motion as the quiet pond rippled by rain. An echo bounces back from afar, your voice distorted and unfamiliar. Is this thing? Your voice. For a moment there, it sounded like song. The sculpture is once again still. There is a rush warmth through your body, a jolt of innervation that steadies your balance. A barrage of tactile sensation floods your mind as you feel footsteps and wind, but on your face or your limbs. A moment later, the flood of information begins to make sense. You are feeling the wind against the spire, and even the weight of your own feet, as if the spire were a second spine. With this connection made, you feel your awareness pull from this place, not as a traveler, but as one glimpsing the world from impossibly far away. In this moment, there is nothing you cannot see, though you see it nearly all at once in a flood of sensation that is difficult to parse. You see a spire at the crossing of an ancient stone structure, two walls extending off into the distance. At the base of this eternal spire, settlers and merchants act in every way unconcerned, toiling under the observation of unforgiving taskmasters. As the shadow of the spire falls over them, the mood changes. The settlers pause in shared unease and look up at the sky, toward you. Though you haven't seen it in person, you are certain this is a vision of Lethian's crossing, for nowhere else are the Tearsmen brave or desperate enough to settle at the intersection of bane-ridden old walls. Near this settlement, built at the joining of the ancient walls, you see a breach in the massive masonry, a cleft into the forbidden hidden realm within the old walls. Drift closer to the spire, drift closer to the old wall's entrance. Shadows envelop you, muting all sound and vision with a slight delay. There is a feeling of preservation, of wrongness. Whatever arcane power is allowing your senses to drift free of your body seems to falter in this place. Figures haunt the stone halls, drifting emanations of cloud, claw, and fang. They pay you no heed, but you hear them all the same. In the depths of this forbidden place, the deepest chamber is bathed in light. An arcane symbol illuminates the floor, though the details hurt your eyes when you focus. With a gentle tug, your focus pulls back to a new horizon, though it takes you a moment to recognize it as Vendrian's well. You return to the awareness of your immediate surroundings. The effect leaves you unsteady on your feet. The spire feels similar to the one you now occupy, though instead of radiating arcane life, it reeks of dust and crumbling stone. A branch, withering, once pulled from its tree. It reaches for you with a barely perceptible tug. The link between you and the spire recedes. The arcane bond is still present, but the mystical energies, for the moment, are quiet. Your body flooded with excitement and fatigue, it's unclear whether the mystic connection is strengthening you or siphoning. The tower offers nothing by way of answer, and you know that asking would only yield more silence and mystery. The deluge of sensation is over, but the positions of the other spires still linger in your mind. From your vantage point atop the mountain spire, you can easily spot the mysterious structures, each of them rising high above the distant surroundings. Strange. Ebb curls her fingers and draws a quick sigil in the air, then studies how it fades. The magic of this place responds to you. The portal, braziers, it all grows more vibrant when you approach. Before we get ahead of ourselves, it's worth remembering that you ended Kyros' edict. That's no small feat. Maybe your connection to this place is related? Either way, sounds like something for the arcane-minded to investigate. No doubt you have much to report to Tunon. While you meet with the Archon, Florian, Sybil, and I will tend to the wounded and salvage what we can from the Archon's war camps. We'll meet you back at Ascension Hall, provided the Archon of Justice doesn't execute you for assisting us. All right. And with that, we have a couple of new quests here. We've got Stirring Visions, which is investigating the spires, specifically finding a way to the Lethian Crossing spire, and the Voice of Kyros, where Tunon awaits our return to his court in the Bastard City. But that, my friends, is a mission for next time. Hey everyone, J2 John Jeremy here, and I want to thank you for watching. Check out another video from yours truly, or take a look at the playlist for this series. If you haven't done so already, click on the logo to subscribe and keep track of this channel. Until next time, so long, and take care.